E c'è lo sciopero dei mezzi. È la giornata peggiore, ok, per andare in giro in macchina. Quindi, se vuoi, io andavo e stavo lì, cioè, se vuoi passiamo di lì, prendo la carta d'identità, quindi mi sono tolta sto pensiero e almeno
Positiva, pur in un contesto di potenziale incremento della volatilità legata alle condizioni geopolitiche in atto. Il dollaro è visto ancora tendenzialmente debole, comunque in un range.
Michele, you might want to mute. You're not muted. All right, everybody. Being Dutch, quite Germanic. Right, we'll give it one more minute and then we will kick off. So bear with me, please. All right, it's that time. So hopefully everybody has been able to log in. I will try to start. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing for the pings. There's nothing I can do about that. And so for my background, my name is Pancras Beekenkamp. I've been in the markets for close to 3 decades. I joined in April. It will be 4 years since I've joined Bloomberg, and I'm responsible for sell-side equities. In the last 18 months or so, I've been very much involved in a number of product developments, which are, as you might know, from DS to DSX to DocW and now AskB. And so in that process, I picked up a number of things to better understand the art of prompting. And that is the things we'd like to discuss now. Perhaps it's best to start at the beginning, and that is basically Bloomberg and AI. So let me start there. And so AIBB is the page on Bloomberg, where you can find all our background and our details. Let me just say that that is a journey for Bloomberg that we started quite some time ago, and we want to be, transparent and efficient in the marketplace. And so we started with tagging in news. We have the sentiment indicators, supply chain analysis, and so we've been using machine learning for quite some time ago. For quite some time already. And this is, I think, very important. Having been on the sell side for a long time, and lots of the time, it's seen as a cost, as a data cost. And the thing that surprised me more than anything else is the unbelievable investment that's ongoing at Bloomberg. And so, not only in people, but also in product, computational power, there's a lot of investment going on. And so I think what we can show you now is one of those fruits of that labor. If I think about AI on the terminal, we split it out in 5 elements: extraction, enrichment, search, summarization, and time series analysis. And just to ease you into things, let me give you one example here. Hopefully you can see this. So this is BMW. This is the function called MODL. And it's quite straight. So Roberto, you're not muted. Could you, and Marco, could you please mute, guys? Can everybody please try to mute? And so if I go to BMW and I go to the last quarter, if I think about extraction, these numbers, sorry, can please, Marco Guidazzi, could you please mute? And so these numbers are extraction by machines. So within seconds, you get these numbers out for the quarter. What is our next enhancement? Well, basically that sits here. We can also give you the bullish and bearish takeaway. And so we give you an insight and a better understanding and a summarization of the main points. And if you then want to go deeper, you can ask a question of the transcript. So we lead you to the documents, to the source documents, and you can ask a question here just pertaining to that document itself. Sorry, guys, could you please make sure you're muted? And then sort of going back, so to BMW, I can also then compare across periods. So I click here and I can look at the earnings call, and it will show me so the earnings calls of BMW for the last 8 periods. And then I have here different topics that I can choose that I want to see. And even I can do a free prompt and ask a question myself. So the point is, this is an example of extraction and enrichment that is already in place in the terminal. Sorry, Arde Santos, could you please mute? And so to summarize, we want to accelerate data liquidity to give you quicker insights. We want to improve your user experience, and we continue to add new products and functionalities. And so again, on the journey, and now we sit here, the earnings call summaries, documents, and then we will, we are improving this experience. And that last thing, or the next thing, is basically called Ask Me. When I was working on this, my suggestion was to call it Ask Mike. They didn't share my sense of humor, and so it will be called Ask Me. But we want to remain our domain expertise. We want to be very transparent about attribution. You will not see us mingling answers from different people. And so especially important for the sell side, if we quote somebody, it will link directly verbatim to their insights. And it is an agentic AI. It's a collaboration network. Gloria and William, would you mind muting? And so I don't know if you know what agentic AI is. And basically, if you would have asked one question in the past, it will then look out for answers. We have now split up these things. So we have now an agent that is translating your question for news, translate your question for market data, translate your question for research, and in the future we will add more things like, for instance, portfolio analytics. And so basically it's accelerating and deepening the agents to find different queries for you. And so mastering the art of the prompt. And here we are now. And this is, I think, very important, something which I have learned. And so we think at Bloomberg that we can make a difference because we understand the taxonomy. If you talk about a poison pill, if you talk about jaws in banking, we understand what that means. And so with the right taxonomy, we think we can bridge the gap between chatbot generality and analyst precision. And so for the last 18 months, my colleagues and myself, we have many decades of experience in markets, have been really training our large language models to make sure that you get the answers you're looking for. And so I think this is very important to think about this. Trust. What you need to do if you start prompting is to check the results and not so much the process. So focus on the quality of the output and the achievement of the final goal. And build confidence is that you get the outcome you are looking for. Clarity. You have to be very specific in what you need, and then let the machine figure out a way to get there. Provide context. Implement your constraints. Give a time frame. Perhaps select providers. Explain what your desired result is. And then let the machine do the agentic work. Let the machine figure out the way to execute your steps. But the better you describe what your deliverable and success criteria are, the better your answers. And also this context is very important. You will have your limited amount of compute that is available, and you want to make sure that those questions are focused and in the right context. And then an iterative refinement. The great upside of going from, and I don't know if you've used that in the past, but if you go from a DSX where you could ask the question of the documents, which was one question at a time, in ASP you can refine and build on that. There was a book written a couple of years ago. It's called AI Co-Intelligence, and I think that's a very good mindset of what this is. It's an iterative process. You need to check and verify, and you need to make sure that if these are the questions, if these are the answers to the questions you were looking for. And in that process, I think this is a very good 9-point logic framework for you to do. Perhaps you know the phrase who, what, why, when. And so the phase one is your setup. Why? What is your outcome? Who are you? And what is your context? Are you a small cap investor looking at Italy? Are you a banks analyst looking at the European banks? Are you a value investor looking for income? So, making sure that you understand, that the machine understands where you're coming from, what your persona is, what you're looking for is super important. So the setup is defining the intent of the players involved. The inputs is loading the precise data and timeframes. And timeframes is super important. This is the thing that surprised me most. And so let me give you already some very heads up information on that. The machine is not particularly good in next quarter. So if you are able to say, between this date and that date, it will help you better. Also keep in mind that not all companies have a fiscal year end that is a calendar year end. And so you might need to adjust your inputs in explaining that you're looking at the fiscal year ends of a company and therefore align quarters in that way. And then the outputs is formatting the result and verifying the truth. And so let's break this down. And if we start with the inputs, so state the intent. Define the outcome immediately. Are you writing a recap? Are you building a pitch? Are you analyzing a warning and want to look at read across? The model needs a job to be done. And then state the intent. You are a top-rated analyst, and this triggers a specific vocabulary that you want to enhance in. We can even change the language, and so things like that. I have learned my English in British English. not American English, so I can actually ask to be written in British English. Right, so that is your setup. Sorry, come on. So the context, right? Define your role, define your own role. What is your investment style? What are you looking for? What is your benchmark? What is your objective? And so one good example is a prompt we have created for a meeting of a company. Now, so I am a value investor focused on dividend yields. I will meet the CFO of company Shell, and I want to understand the sustainability of their cash flows to maintain dividend payments in the next 3 years. Following their earnings release, the analyst comments, what are 5 critical questions to ask? So you have focused on value, free cash flow. You will look at the capital allocation. You have given a time frame to look at this, and in this way, your answer will be much more much more precise into what you want to do. And so you can also load precise context, explicitly instruct use of certain sources, use these filings, use the 10 Qs, look at this news, use research from A, B, or C. And that anchors the model to give answers in trusted documents. And the latest quarter is ambiguous, so say fiscal year 2024, ending March 31. That's very precise. And so if you give specificity, this prevents any temporal hallucinations. I find this last thing very important. So be very precise in what you're looking for and what the time frame is. And then you can also change this and make sure that your inputs are very good. You can guide the model in a thought process. And I personally really like that. I've written some of these prompts that is iterative, that it understands your role, that it understands your benchmarks, understands your time frame. And then you can also give steps, right? My first step is the core financials. I want to look at the numbers of revenue, EPS, and margins. And then I want an operational. So give me a summary of the business drivers and the segmental performance. And then I want to look at, once we understood this, then implement these insights and then add the forward-looking statements of the company. And so this is what's called scaffolding, and it helps the model understand step by step to wire their process before it attempts to start writing any conclusion, and therefore reducing significantly any errors. Right, and then the output. And so here, the structure is the format that you need. What are the key metrics? And put that into HTML table. Put an endless summary in bullet points. Use so many words. And then the guardrails. What is the tone? I am a professional. These are the length of my summary. Here is the source hierarchy. These are the filings. I want to use filings and then BQL and then news and then perhaps. And so it gives you guardrails on how you want to do this. And then the model prioritizes information density over verbosity. And then verification checks, super important. You can instruct the company or the prompt to say, if consensus data is unavailable, state not available, and flag any missing disclosures. And it encourages the model to admit ignorance. And this, I think, is the single most important way to improve trust. I prefer to have a blank cell and not a made-up number or iterations. And then, of course, Bloomberg always prides itself in click-through traceability. So also in each quote we give, there's a link to the answers. And this is a colleague of mine, Phil Capone, who wrote this, and I really, really like this one. And by all means, try to copy this. And then basically trust but verify. Now, so conduct a comprehensive, transparent self-assessment of the prompt and response provided on the above. Show your response. Rerunning a second and new corrected prompt, ensuring you explicitly correct the identified weaknesses and explicitly retain the identified strengths of the previous prompt and explicitly show the final response generated from the corrected prompts. It's fantastic. And this is such a good example of an iteration to improve the outcome. So finally, some use cases. I don't know if there's any questions so far. Or there's some questions so far. So let me just look at that. This is very kind. Mute microphone. Right. So use cases. So this is a very simple one. And so DSX will now be included in RSP, but basically you can ask the question, what are the main points of the ASML earnings release? What is the main difference with consensus? What are the quiz questions I should ask my analyst? And remind you, this is the earnings release. So this is coming out before the earnings call, right? So already there, you can sort of ask a very simple question. It doesn't matter if you buy or sell side, but basically on the basis of the earnings release, you can already get an insight. And so this is then the outcome. Here's a summary. This is the financial performance, and you can see sort of traceability, right? So you can see click through. You can see what the answers is and who's given that. And then I made this one for peers, and so I think it's super important. And so the instructions are, and this is a really cool thing to know. If you give this in brackets, it will then allow you to give an input on that. So give me a list of peers with the rationale of why they are good peers. Take different geographies and size of revenue into consideration. Is there a specific benchmark to consider? We want to include non-listed companies too. And then also include the M&A transaction details. Make a segment for news, focus on size, premium paid, and then present the results in 3 sections. And this is what that then looks like. I don't know if you can see that, but here there's a clear executive summary. There is these are listed and non-listed peers, and it's split out in pure play and secondary. It will give you some matrix where it's available. And again, so if it's a non-listed company, but we have some information on M&A transaction, again, I think it's very, very valuable. And it includes the recent activities in M&A. And here is some research that's available to give you comments. And then, and here is check the last 4 quarters earnings calls from a sentiment, create a concise, visually rich analysis of a stock using certain insights. Only look at the CEO, CFO remarks, and then give different columns, write a trend summary, and be very careful. And then I asked it to do it in French. And here we are. So these are a French answer with an analysis of Google and then color coding to indicate if it's positive or negative. And then you can do the comprehensive, transparent self-assessment we spoke about earlier. And I really like this. It identifies the strengths, it critical weaknesses. And this is a great example of the iteration process that you can go through and improve on. There are some mega prompts you can make as well. And I don't know if this is already available, but you can see sort of my point here is that homework framework. This is the earnings review. This is what I want you to look at. And then I want to look at the results. And then I want the execution of the various expectations. And then it's the brief summary in the output. And so the point here is that you can be very, very expensive in how you want these things to be done. And so let me take you through some examples now, of some live examples. So let me drag this here. The thing is called not ask Mike, but ask B. So if you type in ask B, this is what it looks like. It will launch something. Let me just drag it into that. So this is what it looks like. Just now, let me show you what I've done. And so this is the peer group analysis. Now, let's say you're an ECM analyst, you work for JP Morgan, you want to have 6 peers, and it's the forthcoming IPO of Czechoslovakia Group, the defense machine. I want to compare to the Western defense companies Yes, I want to include non-listed, and I want to look at the last 24 months. And then the first iteration was, do you want to include Western defense companies? What is your industry focus and what is your M&A time frame? And so what I found here very interesting, if it has different divisions, I want to have a sum of the part valuation and therefore separate peers for each segment. And then this is the executive summary. This is the Czechoslovak group. This is what it comes through. And again, you see all these details. You can click on that and you see that the Bloomberg doesn't make anything up. It leaves you to the, and if you don't like something, we can sort of, you can click on that, you can get through the detail. And we think this is just super important, right? So the sourcing is very much available. And so here, this is what they said, etc., etc. And then the recommended peer group by division. And so it splits out defense and ammunition. It then decides that Rheinmetall and these guys are the best peers. It then understands it does also aerospace, and it has a mobility division. And it comes up with this key metrics separation. It then does the sum of the parts, because basically split by revenue, this is important. And it gives me M&A and private equity activity, some analyst commentary, and then I like this prompt as well, which basically is valuation premium discount driven by division. And so why somebody in this group getting a premium or a discount, and how does that sort of affect me in my assessment of this company? And so, for all the data queries, we show you how this is done, where you can find that in Bloomberg, in BQL. And so I think it's a very comprehensive query. Let me just go here. Let me just focus on the things that are available on Bloomberg. Build a briefing pack, track company fundamentals, chart performance trends, and prepare for earnings. So let me just click on this, prepare for earnings. And then I click here on edit. And so again, what is your goal? I generate a concise numerical analyst preview of a company. This is the tone. This is the style. This is the structure. This is the analyst framework. These are the tables. These are the guidelines. And so this is, I think, a very good example of things we can do going forward. So what is the company? Let's look at Adyen. I can then run it. And so it shows the thinking. It understands the question. Does it understand? And so it's very interesting. Do you see here now the agents at work? One is looking at the query for the data. One is looking at the events calendar. So you see different agents doing different works. I think, again, speed here is not the most important thing. Accuracy, we think, is important. I think I wrote Ajin. Do again for Ajin. Sorry, I misspelled Ajin, which is also good. So it's not hallucinating. My apologies for that. Are there any questions so far? Is there anything you want me to demonstrate? Is something unclear? Should I go back to anything? This is a good time to put something in the chat, if you will. And again, you see all the different agents at work. BQL data for Argent, it now understands what it is. It then looks at the research. It looks at news articles that are relevant. And here we go. So earnings preview. When is the number out? This is today. And these are the source data. It's scheduled in a month's time. This is the outlook. This is the expectations. So these are very simple examples of the things going forward you can now do. Of course, it's driven by your own entitlement. But I think it will be really a very good feeling, an enhancement of your efficiencies. And so this is a feeling of what's available, what's coming down the track. And that's the thing I wanted to share with you all. I hope this was useful. Here are 2 questions. Let me just answer those. Is AskB free for all users? No, it's not. So AskB is only for BBA, Bloomberg Anywhere users at the moment. And the rollout is starting with on the equity side. The AI analysis document showed at the start of the webinar. Sure, let me go back to the start. Let me go back. Oh, okay. So again, so let me do this. I think this is your question. So here's capital one as an example. I can do MODL, model. And then I go not at the next earnings, but at the last earnings, which is Q3. And what is new in MODL, that here on the right-hand side, we have given some bullish and bearish takeaways. And I don't know if you recall, for instance, third quarter Amazon, the numbers were beating, but the outlook was so negative, the stock went down. And so I think that is very interesting. But you can take the bullish and bearish takeaways, and then here I can ask a question of the transcript, or I can compare the documents. And so if I click here, ask a question of the document, I then go into the document of that earnings call, which was the source. Come on. No, I don't know why this is not happening. Bear with me. So I'm sit here, I click here, this should just launch. I know it's in testing. All right, it should go here. I don't know why this is not. So probably an engineer is now doing something. But basically, if you look at this function, it then gives you that document that you can ask the questions. I'm sorry why, I don't know why this is not working at the moment. Or I could again compare this across a number of periods. Come on. Great, I'm sorry. This is the downside of doing it live. It is in client testing. And so I'm sure one of the engineers is working on it. But basically, keep an eye on these two things. You can go to the earnings call, you can go to the transcript, and you can compare different. Is it going to emerging markets too, or just developed? It's staggered. So basically, where we have the data and the details, it will be there. And large cap will be more important than small cap. So so it in principle, the details are there. It's just a matter. So the tools are there, and it should be applicable to all, if that makes sense. So it is that little bit. One other thing, you all know company news, CN, and again, it's just an indication of what we are doing. So company news, everybody knows these are the news stories, but I can now also get a summary. So I click on AI summary, and then I get the most important news, and then again with links. And then I don't know if you know this one, but there's a thing called news theme, key themes. And I think this is also interesting because, of course, if we think about Capital One, it's the capping of the interest rates. And so if I then go to last week, then I can see here that 38 of the 152 stories were about the credit cards. And so this is sort of, it brings you a more concise and more brought together information on news on a certain thematic that you might have missed otherwise if it was on a 1 hour basis, like this. No headlines because they're closed. So I think these are the things. Let me try one more time if CW is working. Let me do IBM. So if I go to IBM, I do .w document workspace. No, okay. So I'm sorry for that. Somebody's doing some engineering work on that, so I can't do that. So I'll leave it there. Thank you all for your time. If you have any specific questions, don't. I'm happy for you to reach out. Your individual sales and account manager will be able. Ellen, would you mind muting? And William. Alan. Okay. Sorry for that. So your individual salesperson can inform you about the rollouts and give you indications of when it's available to you. And that was it. Thank you all very much for your time.